Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am Anna Carugati, the Group Editorial Director of WorldScreen. We have a fascinating panel here today that will come before an equally, if not more fascinating premiere at 6 o'clock. The topic of discussion today is co-production, and I think the first thing we need to clarify is that that is a very broad term, and during our discussion we will get into various models. Now, because I don't want to grossly mispronounce anybody's name, I'm going to ask each one of you to introduce yourself and briefly explain what your responsibilities are. Hélène, should we start with you?
So I work for ARTE, which is the German-French channel, where we broadcast about 50% documentaries, and I'm the deputy head of, effectively, the specialist factual department, where we commission science history, nature, and natural history.
Yeah, I'm Yuan Tian from CCTV 9, the dedicated factual channel of the CCTV group. I am responsible for the channel's international acquisitions and co-production.
Hi, I'm Murdoch, and I'm Managing Director of NHNZ. We're a production company, and we make a range of factual productions and kids' TV. And co-production probably takes up maybe 60% of what we do, is working in co-production.
Hello, I'm Jens Monath, working for TerraX, which is a Sunday night slot for ZDF. And we co-produce a lot with the BBC, other channels also, and also production companies from abroad.
Hi, I'm Pamela Aguilar, and I'm with PBS. I am basically responsible for most of our genres. I oversee news, science, culture, natural history, history, and overlook a lot of our commissions and co-productions.
Hi, I'm Ralf Rueckauer. I'm running the factual department of ZDF Enterprises. ZDF Enterprises is a distribution arm from the public broadcaster ZDF in Germany.
Okay, thank you. So, as I said, co-production is a broad term. It can be a jointly financed, a jointly produced product. This is a question for anyone or all of you on the panel. Could you give some examples of what kind of joint productions your channel has been involved in?
Obviously, the premiere this evening is a good example of a co-production. Probably a very extreme example of a co-production too, because we have so many partners. And you know, for us, for NHNZ, we're a production company, and so co-production is important for us because it brings together financing, but also brings together platforms from different parts of the world, and that's essential for us to be able to create something as big as Big Pacific. Because it's an expensive underwater blue chip series to make.
Well, as I said, I'm working for TerraX, and we have big co-productions the last years. To give some examples, we co-produced The Celts with the BBC as a 3-part series, rather expensive, and we did all the reenactment. The BBC sent us the documentary shots, so that was a very good, clear co-production. We did First Flight with ABC in Australia, and ARTE is the production company from Perth. So it's all kind of models we're in. We are in models with broadcasters, but also in with models with production companies like NHNZ, because for the Big Pacific we did it as a co-production.
Yeah, and I can echo that for PBS. For us being a public broadcaster in the US, it's really important to engage in co-productions. We also engage with other broadcasters or production companies. What's important for us is that we're able to really access local productions, local producers from around the world, and also are able to really make our dollars stretch so that we're co-producing in the sense that we are editorially involved, but then also co-production in the sense that it's it just makes more sense financially so that our content can be a lot stronger.
Besides sharing financial costs and risks, can a co-production also give access to locations or experts or other sources that maybe you would not have on your own?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at a production like Big Pacific, where it's such a massive geographical area, you know, a lot of the, you know, co-producing partners have some sort of link with the Pacific. Most do. And therefore, you can access, you know, for example, access parts of China that we wouldn't be able to access without CCTV. Access parts of, you know, the US or French Polynesia. So I think it's really important part of that.
But Kyle, you're aware that Germany and France is not along the
They
Pacific?
don't border the Pacific. Okay.
I mean, it's the same for us. We've just launching a co-production with NHK, and it's a big drama doc. So it's definitely access, expert location, down to costume of samurai. So and they're literally managing the production locally. So it's incredibly beneficial and very, between the French and the Japanese production, it's very, very intertwined. So it's way beyond just finance. It's literally sharing teams and everything else.
And what topics and projects have you found? Because when you're pulling together partners, not only from different countries, it might be a different kind of channel than yours. What kind of topics and subjects have you found tend to work when you want to co-produce? Or can you make anything work if you really want to?
For us, it's not necessarily limited, but I think that science and natural history works really, really well for us. We, as I mentioned, co-produce with a lot of partners. We have one big co-production that's a multi-year co-production with the BBC, and we've been creating really strong science and history projects, science and natural history projects. History is a little tougher for us at times because it really needs to relate to an American audience, and so things perhaps like World War II or Vietnam War that are really relatable, then we can do. The other thing is, because of the way that PBS is structured, we have our member stations that also create content like Nova, Secrets of the Dead, Frontline, and they also have co-production deals that bring us other genres. So while for PBS headquarters, science and natural history is really big, some of our some of our signature series do branch out into other genres.
It's exactly the same for us. It's science, nature. I was revising the figures before I came here, and most of international fundings come to our science and nature program. And I think it's also because that editorial is probably easier to serve international audiences. It's less controversial to do a natural history unit series.
And history, every country would have its own point of view, so that would make it more complicated. Ralf?
Yeah, I don't agree. I mean, we do a lot of history programming, and we have a long tradition in co-production with A&E in the US, for example. So we do a lot of history. Or as Jens Monath just mentioned, we did something about the Celts together with the BBC. So I think there is a space for history. But I agree that it's locally different, because sometimes we don't share the same history, whereas science and natural history is more global from the start. Yeah.
I think what is fair to say is that we are looking for partners for historical docs, because if you look at the market right now, you don't find very many big documentaries about history. So this is something that there's a lack of these kind of products on the market. So to make big projects happen, like the Celts, for example, you need partners to do that, because the audience now expects something like Hollywood-like kind of cinematic look. And for these historical movies, you need these kind of partners. Otherwise, you can't do it.
Right, right. And to segue into my next question, Kyle, I wanted to start with you. As viewers have so many entertainment options, and because so much of what they see is high-end quality production values, are ambitious tentpole projects the one NHNZ would prefer? Are those your preferred projects to pursue?
Yeah, I think that those are the ones for us that work the best. Big, ambitious, kind of noisy series. Natural history for us works really well in global co-production because, you know, the animals don't date. You know, they don't change fashion. You know, it's the same. The animals have behaved in a similar way for a long time, but technology has changed, and so those sort of stories really work. They're really strong. And you know, we find that for co-production, for the big natural history specials, they really work for us well.
Right. Pamela, the US market is extremely crowded and competitive, and yet PBS, and I don't think this is said enough, consistently attracts millions of viewers. A lot of other channels are noisy and loud, and they do great things, but I think we need to point out how the viewership is quite consistent. Yes. So what kind of projects fit your remit, and what do you look, what are you looking for?
What's really incredible about PBS is, and as I've mentioned, we're a public broadcaster, so we are really, we have the responsibility to bring content that is accessible to the entire public in the US. So we have everything from drama, science, history, natural history, news, public affairs, culture, you name it. So for us, it's really endless. We're constantly looking for new content. We have a fantastic model in that we have about 350 member stations. So the way in which I think we are able to engage millions of viewers across the board, and for several years now in a row, we've been really proud to say that we're number 5 across the market, and that's really only behind the 4 top broadcasters in the States. And that's something that we've been really, really proud of, and right now with news really being amped up because of recent elections and whatnot, PBS has still remained really, really strong with ratings. And however, our ratings aren't our #1 priority for our content. And so it really is that combination of member stations that are rooted into the communities and have really, really good relationships locally. And so then when we're able to broadcast and bring fantastic content like Big Pacific and other co-productions that are either tentpole-y, splashy, or something that's a lot smaller, but yet, as you say, other networkers, they're doing great work. They have tons of money to market. We don't have that particular resource. However, because of the way that we're constructed, our local stations are out there and at the ready and have that communication open. And so our viewers are consistently growing, and we're growing astronomically on digital, and so it's a constant growth that's really exciting in a market right now that we've seen just statistically that other networks are dipping a little.
Right. Jens, ZDF is also a public broadcaster. Do you feel that in your TerraX slot you can do types of shows that maybe a commercial station wouldn't, or is the difference between commercial and public broadcaster programming not as marked today as it maybe was 5-10 years ago?
Well, I would say it's not as marked as it has been 5 or 10 years ago, that's for sure. But still, we cross certain lines when we do stories that are not so familiar. We did a story about first flight. That was the question, who flew first? Was it really the Wright brothers or was it a German guy? I doubt very much that a lot of commercial channels would have done that story. Apart from that, like One Planet, these stories we co-produced together with the BBC, it ran very well on TerraX. And I want to give you one example. TerraX is shown within the ZDF family within the last year, 3,000 hours. So you can imagine how many different kind of shows we have. And in these different kind of shows, you find everything from natural wildlife to first flight. So I basically say to anyone who comes to me with a proposal for a story, explain to me the log line. The log line has to work. And if the log line works in 3 sentences, there's a good chance we do it.
Hélène, so ARTE is actually a co-production in a sense on its own, right? You get programming both from German stations and from French. How do co-productions fit into ARTE's programming strategy, and what have been some recent ones that have been successful for you?
So I should have said I'm ARTE France actually. So we kind of ARTE France in Paris, ARTE Germany, which is spread across Germany, and then Strasbourg, which is the headquarters, the kind of Yuan of ARTE. So it really depends on our slots. I'm responsible for 5 slots, and the role of co-production will vary dramatically between one slot to the other. So it's not, I mean, the strategy is very much managed by the producers that we co-produce with rather than us, really, because they seek out partners. We have broadcaster partners that we like working with and have editorial consensus with, but the actual seeking out international funds are done by the producers. But I mean, going back to the topic. So the strategy is on big, ambitious series which require loads of money, really, as well as access, but a lot of money, really. And that's mostly natural history, some drama doc, and so actually the one we've just commissioned, it's going to be called Leaving Universe. Well, that's the working title, and that's a big, ambitious primetime, loads of CGI science show, and we're working with an Australian partner and Curiosity Stream in the US, and that's working really well. So yeah, back to the topic, really, that's where we tend to do big co-productions. Right.
Yuan, CCTV is also a state broadcaster. What does CCTV 9 want to offer its viewers, and what have been some of the co-productions that it has done recently that have been very successful?
Yes, as you said, CCTV is the biggest public broadcaster in China, and we have 16 free channels and digital and paid channels in total, maybe more than 40 channels. So the viewers actually, they have a lot of choice. And as the dedicated factual channel, we try to, no matter we acquire or we co-produce or we produce in-house, we try to bring the highest production value and the best storytelling in terms of the kind of traditional or classic factual program to the audience. And well, we launched the channel in 2011. From then, we tried to work with our international colleagues. Like Kyle, we work quite already quite a few projects with Kyle, and we learn from the partners and from our other platforms. The most successful co-production. It's difficult to define which is the most successful one, but myself, I kind of very liked one of the series we did with Kyle, which is about the title is the end of the wild, which is about our biggest basketball. Famous basketball player Yao Ming. He went to Africa to experience the fact how the animals was treated in Africa and tell the story to the Chinese audience, and to hopefully through this film we can let the Chinese audience know what's really happening in Africa, and to make them aware what we should do to our future, to our next generation and the planet. I think that's something we are always trying to do.
And Ralf, what does ZDF Enterprises look for in the projects it chooses to produce or finance and distribute?
Yeah, we do wildlife science and history only, so this is our focus. And the good thing is, if you do co-production, you have a lot of friends around the world, like these people sitting here. So it's really a very nice situation. But on the other side, sometimes they give you a call when they call it a gap in the financing, and this means it's a call for money, and they ask you, can you please spend a few €1,000s? And sometimes it's a lot, and you have to invest into that, and you take a risk. And you don't have a slot on your own, because we're a distributor, so we buy programs or we invest into programs that we think other commissioning editors would like to show their audience. So this is our role. I like it pretty much, but over the last couple of years we turned it into another model where we turned it upside down. So we tend to start a new and fresh idea together with a producer, like with Jasper James in the UK, and we encouraged him to create a sizzle on the topic of size matters, and he did, and now we have a co-production. So we want to be a little bit more involved into the real creative process and really financing from start.
All right, well, we have a few minutes left. Let's get into Big Pacific now. Kyle, should we start with you? How did it come about? You were the first one, right, involved in it, so how did the show come about?
So Big Pacific, you know, was probably first evolved. You know, we developed the concept in-house. Where I'm from, you know, from my window in my office, I can see the Pacific Ocean, and it's our backyard, basically. And it's really, you know, NHNZ's been making television documentaries in one form or another for 40 years. And it's almost like a culmination of that 40 years of experience of producing to do something ambitious about the Pacific. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to take, you know, natural history stories and kind of turn them on their head. So we didn't want to give people exactly what they expected. We wanted to find unexpected stories around the Pacific. And we had that, you know, background and track record of being able to pull out these stories, that experience. So, you know, and in terms of what we had to do to get partners on board, I mean, it's partly it's because we have a good working relationship on previous co-productions, and they do well. So with Hélène and Yuan, for example, we make Life Force, which is a co-production with NHK, and that both it rates really well on both channels. And so there's that, you know, we presented the idea to them, and it's based partly on track record. And then Jens, for example, was probably got on board because our sizzle was quite interesting. It wasn't what people were expecting. It was, you know, it was quite modern. It was quite edgy, and it was completely different. You know, if we had said this is a natural history documentary about the Pacific Ocean, people would have turned off. But so we didn't say that. We just said, here's the sizzle. You know, what do you think? And I think that partly was the sizzle, partly was our ability to have that track record with different co-producers that helped create Big Pacific, because, yeah, it was a very ambitious story, a very ambitious undertaking, a very ambitious business proposition as well, so all three.
So for anyone else who joined in as a partner, what was it about the sizzle reel that appealed to you? What made this unique and different?
It just gave you goosebumps. I mean, it was just like extraordinary music, excellent pictures. Really, it gave you the never-seen-before feeling, and you don't have it all the time. I mean, 1,000 proposals a year, and then sometimes you get a little bit bored, and you think, ah, it's just another one about the Pacific Ocean, and I've seen it several times. But it was very smart that Kyle produced this sizzle, because it was really outstanding.
And how was editorial control shared? Was there one person who sort of decided what was going to be in the series, and how it was 4 parts, right? 4 parts and the making of, is that correct? Sure. Was there one person and then everybody got on board, or was it shared in any way?
I think, no, it's a very, for us, for NHNZ, it's a really collaborative process. And one of the first things we do when we set out on these really ambitious co-productions is we hold a summit, where we get, you know, invite main partners down to New Zealand, or we meet up somewhere, and we discuss the topics face to face. And so in this case, you know, CCTV 9 and PBS and ZDF were the sort of main, the biggest contributors, and so we invited them down to New Zealand, and we discussed about what the topics were, and what people liked and what people didn't like, and there was a real process there. But I really enjoy working really collaboratively with our partners in that way. It means that people have got skin in the game, you know, and they really feel like they've, you know, are involved. Yeah.
When you embark on something this ambitious and expensive, how important is trust among the partners?
Well, I would say it's the most important thing, actually, because people change. In nowadays world, very many people change very quickly in TV channels. So it's a problem. You talk to a commissioning editor, you talk about a co-production, half a year later he's not there anymore. So the next one will say, no, I want it totally different. This is a problem. So basically for me it's about trust and confidence in the persons, in the production company and the broadcaster.
So my understanding is that this was shot at the highest level, what, 4K to 6K, and I won't go any further than that because I'll show my ignorance, but did that imply a more complicated shoot? I mean, were again, lenses, maybe there's another term for it, are they more susceptible to dust or dirt or movement or whatever? How was this high a level of production impacting the shoot as a whole?
Yeah, I think, you know, the technical specifications for delivering in 4K UHD are pretty stringent. Now, luckily, we made sure we were hiring, you know, the best cinematographers who were really capable of, wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Of filming it in that way. You know, we had people like, you know, Howard Hall, Peter Craig, the late Bob Cranston. Bob actually, you know, he's one of the best underwater cinematographers of all time. And unfortunately, he passed away halfway through filming, which was really sad. But we had all this experience on board and helping with the technical side. You know, we've really prided ourselves in being at the leading edge of that sort of technological waves and of really understanding 4K UHD. So now, for example, when we started Big Pacific, filming in 4K was a very big deal, and there was only limited, you know, cameras that were capable of filming to the specification. We had this really smart, our head of IT is a really smart operator who future-proofed it for us, luckily. So we're able to, because it's advancing all the time.
All right, now we're going to be, the screening will be shortly, but could you just give us a tease? I read someplace that you're not telling the story of the Pacific necessarily from a geographic point of view or from a habitat point of view. This is more from emotions. Just tell us a little bit.
Yeah, it was a really interesting take. So we decided to base the films, rather than splitting up geographically, it's kind of predictable. We wanted to do something a little bit different. So each hour is driven by a narrative arc of a particular emotion. So, for example, we have violent Pacific, we have passionate Pacific, we have voracious Pacific, and tonight the screening that we're watching is about mysterious Pacific. And it's really, you know, it's a snapshot, and it's really a thumbs up to, you can't tell all the stories, but we can tell, you know, a snapshot of life in the Pacific and tell it through that narrative arc, which has been really challenging, but it's a really interesting way and of telling that story, and yet leaving it open too for further investigation, because you don't want to do a closed book, you know, of the Pacific.
Right.
And it's absolutely beautiful. Wait till you see it.
Well, and on that note, it will be screened here in about 10 minutes, so please stay with us. But before, join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you so much.